My name is Lena Hart. I've spent the last 10 years building Hart, contemporary gallery from nothing and protecting everything I inherited from my grandmother through the Hart Family Trust. What my husband doesn't know is that while he thinks he's cornered me, I've been preparing for this moment for months. I hear Evan's footsteps on the hardwood stairs, and something in the rhythm tells me this conversation has been rehearsed. He appears in my office doorway holding a manila envelope wearing his charcoal suit, the one he saves for depositions and board meetings. "We need to talk," he says, stepping inside without invitation. I save the document on my screen and turn to face him. "About what?" "About us." He sets the envelope on my desk with deliberate precision. "About our future." I glance at the envelope but don't touch it. Sounds serious. Before I go on, let me ask you something. If you were in my position facing a husband demanding you sign away your home and your business, would you fight back? Or would you sign to avoid the conflict? Tell me in the comments what you would do. It is. Evan pulls the chair from across my desk closer, sitting down like he's about to conduct a business meeting. I think we both know this marriage isn't working, Lena. We've been avoiding the elephant in the room for months. Have we? The late nights at the gallery, the way you've been distant. We're living like roommates. He opens the envelope and slides papers across my desk. I think it's time we faced reality. The documents are exactly what I expected: separation agreement, property division, quitclaim deed. My name appears throughout, paired with his in neat legal formatting. "You want a divorce?" I say. "I want us to handle this like adults. No drawn-out court battles, no public drama." His voice takes on that smooth, reasonable tone he uses with difficult clients. "Clean separation, fair division of assets." I scan the first page, noting how the property descriptions favor him heavily. "Define fair. You keep the Oregon cottage, I know how much that place means to you. But this house stays with me. I'll buy out your interest in Hart Contemporary at market value." "What market value?" "200,000 for your half seems reasonable. The gallery is worth at least 4 times that amount, but I keep my expression neutral. And the house? You quitclaim your interest to me, I take over the mortgage. Simple. Simple. Except this house was purchased entirely with my inheritance money. That's been carefully kept separate from our marital assets, despite his repeated suggestions to simplify our finances." "This feels rushed," I say. Evan leans forward, his reasonable facade slipping slightly. "Rushed?" "Lena, we haven't had a real conversation in weeks. You're always working, always traveling for art acquisitions." He makes air quotes, and there's something ugly in his expression. We both know what this is. What is? Don't play dumb. The weekend trips to Portland, the secretive phone calls. If you're seeing someone, just say so. I almost laugh. The weekend trips were meetings with my attorney. The phone calls were with my accountant. But I let him believe what he wants to believe. "I'm not seeing anyone," I say quietly. "Then prove it. Sign these papers and we can both move on with dignity intact." I pick up the separation agreement, reading through the terms more carefully. Everything he's demanding was acquired before our marriage or with my separate funds. But the paperwork makes it look like marital property. And if I don't sign? Evan's mask drops completely. Then we do this the hard way. Contested divorce, public proceedings, forensic accounting of your business records. He stands up, towering over my desk. "Your gallery caters to high-end collectors, Lena. How do you think they'll react when the newspapers start digging into your personal life?" "What personal life?" "The one where you spend every weekend in Portland, supposedly buying art, but never bringing anything back to the gallery. The one where you're taking mysterious phone calls and hiding financial documents." His voice rises. "I found the copies in your desk drawer. Bank statements, trust documents, what are you planning?" My blood runs cold, but I force myself to stay calm. Those were decoy documents, planted where he'd find them. The real evidence is safely stored elsewhere. I'm not planning anything. Bullshit. Evan slams his hand on the desk. "You think I'm stupid? You've been setting up some kind of exit strategy for months. Well, here's mine." He points at the papers. "Sign this or I'll ruin your gallery's reputation. I'll make sure every collector in the Pacific Northwest knows exactly what kind of person they're dealing with." "What kind of person is that?" "The kind who hides assets from her husband. The kind who lies about business trips and sneaks around behind his back." He leans closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The kind who thinks she's smarter than everyone else." I look at him for a long moment. This man I married 10 years ago who now stands in my office, making threats about destroying my life's work. What he doesn't know is that I've been recording every conversation we've had in this room for the past month. "You really want me to sign these?" "I want you to stop playing games and face reality. This marriage is over. The question is whether we end it quietly, or whether I have to drag you through court and expose every dirty secret you think you're hiding. I reach for my pen, and Evan's eyes light up with triumph. That's more like it. You'll buy me out of the gallery for $200,000? Cash. 30 days after the papers are filed. And I quitclaim the house? Effective immediately. I sign my name with careful, deliberate strokes. Each signature feels like setting a trap that he's walking into willingly. There, I say, sliding the papers back to him. Happy? Evan's whole demeanor changes, becoming almost gentle again. I know this is hard, but it's for the best. We both deserve to be happy. I reach into my purse and remove my house keys, sliding them across the desk. The spare gallery key follows. I'll need a few days to clear out my personal items. I say, take your time. I'll be staying downtown until you're settled elsewhere. He gathers the signed papers with obvious satisfaction. I hope you know this isn't personal, Lena. It's just, we grew apart. I slip my wedding ring off my finger and place it next to where the keys were. The diamond catches the afternoon light, throwing small rainbows across his hands as he reaches for the documents. Of course, I say. Just business. I gather my laptop and purse, leaving everything else exactly as it is. Evan doesn't try to stop me as I walk past him toward the door. Lena? His voice is softer now, almost regretful. I pause in the doorway without turning around. Yes, I really did love you. You know, in the beginning. I know, I say. That's what makes this so perfect. I close the front door behind me and walk to my car, parked in the driveway of the house that will soon be entirely mine again. Through the window, I can see Evans still in my office, examining the signed papers like he can't quite believe his good fortune. My phone buzzes as I start the engine. Text to Margaret Chen. He took the bait. Paper signed. Meet tomorrow 9 a.m. as planned. Her response comes immediately excellent. Bring the recordings. As I drive away from the house, Evan thinks he just stole from me. I catch his silhouette in the office window, and I know that tomorrow morning I'll be making the most satisfying phone call of my life, the one where I explain to him exactly how a premarital trust works. Margaret Chen's law office smells like leather and fresh coffee, a combination that usually calms me. But this morning, sitting across from her mahogany desk with the signed separation papers spread between us, I can feel her tension radiating through the room. Lena, tell me you didn't actually sign these. Margaret says, adjusting her reading glasses for the third time in 5 minutes. I signed them. All of them? The quitclaim deed, the business transfer. Everything? Every page. I take a sip of my coffee, watching her face cycle through disbelief, horror, and what might be the beginning of panic. Margaret sets the papers down and removes her glasses entirely, rubbing the bridge of her nose. Do you understand what you've done? You've just handed over a $400,000 house and a profitable business to a man who has no legal claim to either. Have I? Lena, this isn't a game. These documents are legally binding. Evan can file them with the county recorder today, and by next week, Margaret. I lean forward, keeping my voice level. What's the first rule of the Hart Family Trust? She stops mid-sentence, her expression shifting from alarm to confusion. That all assets acquired before marriage remain separate property, and what's the second rule? That trust assets cannot be transferred without unanimous consent of all trustees, which means you and your sister. But Lena, and who are the trustees? Margaret's eyes widen as understanding dawns. You and Sarah. Only you and Sarah. Exactly. So tell me, what happens when Evan tries to file a quitclaim deed transferring property that was never mine to transfer in the first place? A slow smile spreads across Margaret's face. The deed is invalid. The house was purchased entirely with trust funds. And what about the gallery? Same thing. Hart Contemporary was established with trust capital before your marriage. Margaret picks up the business transfer documents, scanning them with new eyes. Oh my God, Lena. He's just created a paper trail of attempted fraud. Not attempted. Successful. He manipulated me into signing documents he knew were false, using threats against my business and reputation. I pull out my phone and play a snippet from yesterday's recording. Evan's voice fills the small office. Sign this or I'll ruin your gallery's reputation. I'll make sure every collector in the Pacific Northwest knows exactly what kind of person they're dealing with. Margaret laughs, actually laughs for the first time since I've known her. This is extortion. And he said this in your home office? Where I've been recording every conversation for the past month, with his full knowledge that the room has security equipment. One-party consent state, remember? Lena Hart, you are either the most brilliant client I've ever had or the most reckless. Margaret's phone buzzes and she glances at the screen. Speaking of which, it seems your husband has been busy this morning. What do you mean? My paralegal just sent me a link. Apparently, Evan posted something on social media an hour ago. She turns her computer screen toward me, showing Evan's LinkedIn profile. The post reads, "Sometimes life forces difficult decisions. Excited to announce I'll be taking over operations of Hart Contemporary Gallery while my wife pursues new opportunities. Looking forward to fresh directions in the art world." My coffee cup freezes halfway to my lips. He posted that? Already? Gets better. According to my paralegal, he's also been calling gallery vendors this morning, introducing himself as the new owner. I set down my coffee carefully, feeling a familiar calm settle over me. "What vendors?" Margaret scrolls through her notes. "Your insurance company, the security firm, and apparently he tried to access your business banking this morning. The bank called you, by the way. 3 times. My phone shows the missed calls from First National, all time-stamped between 8 and 9 a.m. He's moving fast. Too fast. Men like Evan always think they're smarter than everyone else." Margaret gathers the signed papers into a neat stack. "The question is, how long do we let him dig this hole before we fill it in? What do you recommend? Let him file the papers. Let him try to transfer the house title. Let him keep calling himself the gallery owner." Margaret's smile turns predatory. "Every action he takes based on fraudulent documents is another charge we can add to the civil suit." My phone buzzes with a text from Sophie, my gallery assistant. "Boss, weird morning. Some guy claiming to be the new owner called asking for access codes. I told him I'd need written authorization from you. Should I be worried?" I show the message to Margaret, who nods approvingly. Smart assistant. "How long has she worked for you?" 3 years. Sophie's good people. I text back, "Don't give him anything. I'll explain later. Normal operations until you hear from me directly. Lena, I have to ask why the elaborate setup. Why not just refuse to sign and fight it out from the beginning?" I walk to the window overlooking downtown Seattle, watching morning commuters hurry past. Because Evan's been planning this for months, maybe longer. He's been positioning himself as the wronged husband, the businessman saving a struggling gallery from his flighty wife's poor decisions. If I'd just refused to sign, it would have looked like I was being unreasonable. And now? Now he's the man who used threats and extortion to steal his wife's business and family home, who tried to commit fraud within hours of getting signed papers, who posted about his victory on social media before the ink was dry. Margaret's phone rings and she glances at the caller ID. It's actually perfect timing. This is David Morrison, Evan's attorney. You know him? Unfortunately, he handles divorces for entitled tech executives who think they can intimidate their way to favorable settlements. She answers the call, putting it on speaker. "David, what can I do for you?" "Margaret, I'm calling about the Hart separation. My client filed the papers this morning and we need to discuss transfer timelines." "Filed already? That was quick." Lena was very reasonable about the whole thing. Sometimes these amicable separations are easier than anyone expects. David's voice carries the satisfaction of someone who thinks he's just won an easy victory. "I'm sure they are. When do you want to meet to discuss logistics?" "How about tomorrow afternoon?" Evan's eager to get the business transition completed. He's already been in touch with several gallery vendors. Margaret and I exchange looks. "Tomorrow works perfectly. Shall we say 2 o'clock? "Excellent. And Margaret?" Evan wanted me to mention that he hopes this can all stay private. No need for public drama over what's essentially a mutual decision. Of course, privacy is always preferable. Margaret's voice is perfectly neutral. "See you tomorrow." She ends the call and turns to me with barely contained glee. "Did you hear that? Amicable separation. Mutual decision." He's creating a narrative that makes this look consensual, which makes the recordings even more damaging. Exactly. When we play those tapes in court, Evan threatening to ruin your reputation, demanding you sign or face public humiliation, it's going to destroy any claim that this was a friendly split. I check my phone again. Another text from Sophie. "Update the guy called back asking for your personal cell number." I hung up on him. "Also, Mrs. Peterson next door wants to talk to you. Says it's urgent. Mrs. Peterson is my 70-year-old neighbor with the new doorbell camera. I should probably go. Mrs. Peterson doesn't text urgent unless something's actually wrong." Margaret stands, gathering the documents into a file folder. "Let him dig deeper, Lena. Men like Evan always overplay their hand. Tomorrow he'll make his biggest mistake yet. What makes you so sure?" "Because tomorrow he's going to walk into my office thinking he's won the lottery." Margaret's smile is sharp as broken glass. "And I'm going to explain to him exactly how inheritance law works in this state." As I leave her office, I can't shake the feeling that Margaret's right. Evan has always been his own worst enemy when he thinks he's winning. The question is, what will he do when he realizes he's not? Mrs. Peterson's living room smells like lavender and fresh-baked cookies. But the expression on her weathered face tells me this isn't a social visit. She's perched on the edge of her floral sofa, iPad in her lap, looking like a prosecutor about to present damning evidence. Lena, dear, I wasn't sure if I should get involved. But after what I saw this morning, she trails off, shaking her silver head. Well, I just couldn't keep quiet. I settle into the chair across from her, noting how her hands shake slightly as she unlocks her tablet. Mrs. Peterson has lived next door for 15 years, and I've never seen her this agitated. What did you see? It's what my doorbell camera saw. Last night, this morning, and she pauses, looking directly at me. Honey, I know it's none of my business, but is everything all right with you and Evan? The question hangs in the air between us. Mrs. Peterson has always been protective of me, ever since the day I moved in. And she brought over a casserole and noticed the bruise on my wrist, from when Evan grabbed me during an argument about money. We're separating, I say simply. Relief floods her features. Good, because what I'm about to show, you would break your heart if you still loved that man. She taps the screen and suddenly, I'm looking at a high-definition view of my own front door. The timestamp reads 11:47 p.m. less than 2 hours after I left the house yesterday. Watch this, Mrs. Peterson says, her voice tight with disapproval. The footage shows Evan's BMW pulling into our driveway. He gets out, but he's not alone. A woman emerges from the passenger side, tall, blonde, wearing a red dress I don't recognize. She's young, maybe late 20s, and she moves with the casual familiarity of someone who's been here before. Who is she? I ask, though I already suspect the answer. I was hoping you could tell me, but it gets worse. Mrs. Peterson fast-forwards to another clip, this one time-stamped 7:23 a.m. This is from this morning. The same woman appears on screen, but now she's wearing one of my silk robes, the navy, one I got from the boutique in Portland. She's carrying what looks like a jewelry box, my jewelry box, while Evan loads boxes into the trunk of his car. He's removing your things, Mrs. Peterson says, her voice shaking with indignation. In broad daylight, with his girlfriend wearing your clothes. I watch in fascination as Evan makes multiple trips, carrying items I recognize, my grandmother's silver picture frames, the antique vase from my office, even my collection of first edition art books. Each trip is captured in crystal clear detail, complete with timestamps that will hold up in any court. Mrs. Peterson, you said your camera records everything? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Cloud storage, so even if something happened to the camera itself, the footage is safe. She looks at me carefully. Lena, I've been recording him for weeks. Different women, different times, but always when you were away. My phone buzzes with an incoming call from Sophie. I answer it immediately. Lena, thank God. We have a situation here. What kind of situation? Your husband, ex-husband, whatever, just showed up at the gallery with some woman and a locksmith. He's trying to change the locks. I put the call on speaker so Mrs. Peterson can hear. What did you tell them? I told them they couldn't touch anything without written authorization from you, but he got aggressive. Started yelling about how he owns the gallery now and I'm fired. Sophie's voice is steady, but I can hear the stress underneath. The locksmith left when he couldn't produce proper documentation, but Evan and his friend are still here. She's taking pictures of everything, the artwork, the inventory, even our client list. Mrs. Peterson looks outraged. He brought his mistress to your workplace? Sophie, are you safe? I ask. I'm fine. I locked myself in the office and called the police. They should be here any minute. There's a pause, then Sophie's voice drops to a whisper. Lena, he's acting crazy, like genuinely unhinged. He keeps saying the gallery belongs to him now, and that you signed everything over willingly, which you did. Mrs. Peterson interjects, looking confused, which I appeared to do. I correct. There's a difference, Sophie continues. The woman with him, she seems to know her way around. She went straight to your office and started going through files. How would she know where anything is unless she's been here before? I finish. Sophie, when the police arrive, make sure they document everything. And whatever you do, don't let them take anything. Already on it. I've been recording everything on my phone. After ending the call, I turn back to Mrs. Peterson, who's scrolling through more footage on her iPad. Here's another good one, she says, showing me a clip from 3 weeks ago. Same blonde woman, but this time she stayed until morning. I've got her leaving at 6:15 a.m. wearing your yoga clothes. The evidence is overwhelming. Not just the affair, but the systematic removal of my personal property. The unauthorized access to my business. The casual way this woman moves through my life like she already lives there. Mrs. Peterson, I need copies of all of this. Already done. She hands me a USB drive. Everything's on there, organized by date. I may be old, but I'm not stupid. I knew you'd need evidence eventually. I pocket the drive, feeling the weight of it like a loaded weapon. Thank you. This is incredibly helpful. That man never deserved you, Mrs. Peterson says firmly. I've watched him come and go for years, and I've seen how he treats you. Always checking up on you, questioning where you've been, making you account for every minute. She pauses, studying my face. You've been planning this, haven't you? Planning what? Your escape. Your revenge. Whatever you want to call it. Her eyes twinkle with something that might be admiration. Good for you, dear. Men like Evan think they can take whatever they want, but they always underestimate the women they're trying to control. My phone buzzes with another text from Sophie. Police arrived. Evan's losing it, screaming about his rights as owner. They're asking him to leave. His girlfriend already went to the car. I show the message to Mrs. Peterson, who chuckles. Sounds like he's having a very bad day. It's about to get worse. I stand, tucking the USB drive safely into my purse. Mrs. Peterson, would you be willing to testify about what you've seen, if this goes to court? Honey, I'd testify about what I've seen if it was broadcast. On the evening news. That man has been making your life miserable for years, and I've had to watch it happen from my kitchen window. She stands too, walking me toward the door. You just give me a call when you need me. As I leave Mrs. Peterson's house, I can see Evan's BMW parked in my driveway. The woman is sitting in the passenger seat, scrolling through her phone while Evan paces back and forth on the front porch, apparently on a heated phone call. I drive past slowly, noting how his gestures are wild and agitated. Everything about his body language screams panic and desperation. This morning he thought he'd won the lottery. Now he's discovering that his victory is more complicated than he anticipated. My phone rings as I pull into a coffee shop parking lot. Margaret's name appears on the screen. Lena, I just got a very interesting call from Seattle PD. Apparently, your husband was asked to leave your gallery after attempting to change locks without proper authorization. So I heard. There's more. David Morrison called me 10 minutes ago. Evan wants to move up tomorrow's meeting. He's demanding we meet today, this afternoon if possible. Margaret's voice carries a note of amusement. He's getting nervous. What did you tell him? That we'd stick to our original schedule. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock. She pauses. Lena, whatever you did, it's working. Desperate people make bigger mistakes. As I sit in my car, watching the normal world go about its business, while my life undergoes a complete transformation, I think about tomorrow afternoon. Evan will walk into Margaret's office, believing he holds all the cards, signed papers, filed documents, possession of the house. What he doesn't know is that I'll be walking in with recorded conversations, doorbell footage, financial records, and a USB drive full of evidence that will turn his narrative inside out. By tomorrow afternoon, Evan will learn that evidence doesn't lie, and neither do cameras. Margaret's conference room feels like a war room this morning, with documents spread across the polished table in neat stacks. Marcus Delacroix, my forensic accountant, sits across from me with his laptop open and a thick folder of printouts. His silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses give him the look of a professor, but his expression carries the satisfaction of a detective who's just solved a complex case. Lena, what Marcus has uncovered is extraordinary, Margaret says, settling into her chair with coffee. I've seen financial misconduct before, but this is textbook fraud with a paper trail so clear it's almost insulting. Marcus adjusts his glasses and opens the folder. I've been analyzing your accounts for 6 weeks, cross-referencing every transaction against your business records and personal banking. What I found is a systematic pattern of theft disguised as legitimate business expenses. He slides the first page toward me. Let's start with the cash deposits. Between March and June of this year, Evan made 37 separate cash deposits into his personal checking account, totaling $47,200. Each deposit was under $10,000 classic structuring to avoid bank reporting requirements. Structuring? I ask, though I suspect I know the answer. Breaking large amounts into smaller deposits to stay under federal detection thresholds. Marcus explains. It's a technique used to hide the source of funds. The pattern here suggests he was converting business funds to cash, then depositing them as if they were personal income. Margaret leans forward, which becomes income tax evasion on top of theft. Marcus flips to the next page. Then we have the creative vendor payments. $2,500 to Bradley Kingston Business Valuation Services in April. I called Mr. Kingston's office. He's never heard of Evan Hart or Hart Contemporary Gallery. I study the bank statement copy, noting the professional-looking invoice attached. He created fake vendors, multiple fake vendors. Cascade Marketing Solutions received $8,900 for promotional consulting. Northwest Art Logistics was paid $15,600 for specialized transport services. Neither company exists. Marcus's voice carries the quiet excitement of someone who enjoys unraveling complex puzzles. All payments went to accounts controlled by Evan or his associates. Margaret passes me another document. Show her the corporate card analysis. This is where it gets interesting. Marcus says, pulling out a highlighted spreadsheet. Your business credit card showed $83,400 in charges categorized as client entertainment and networking expenses over the past year. I cross-referenced these against your gallery's client database and appointment calendar. He points to specific line items. Dinner for 4 at Canlis on March 15th, $847. According to your calendar, you were in Portland that evening meeting with a collector. Hotel charges at the Fairmont, $1,200 per week for the past 3 months. Always booked under E. Pattison, his mother's maiden name. I say quietly. The same name used for the car service charges, the jewelry purchases, and the weekend getaway to Victoria. Marcus turns the page. What's particularly damning is the timestamp correlation. Margaret's phone buzzes and she glances at it. Sorry, continue. I'm just monitoring something. Marcus pulls out his laptop and turns the screen toward me. Remember the doorbell footage Mrs. Peterson provided? I've matched it against Evan's financial activity. He clicks through a timeline display. March 22nd, 11:43 p.m. Mrs. Peterson's camera records a blonde woman leaving your house. March 22nd, 11:48 p.m. ATM withdrawal of $800 from your joint account using Evan's card. He was paying her, I realize, or funding their evening together. But here's the beautiful part. Marcus clicks to another screen. March 23rd, 8:15 a.m. Evan posts on Instagram about celebrating new business partnerships with a photo of champagne and expensive jewelry. March 23rd, 8:03 a.m. charge of $2,400 to Tiffany & Co. on the business credit card. The pattern is so clear it's almost insulting. He was documenting his own crimes. Essentially, yes. Social media became his confession booth. Marcus scrolls through more examples. Every major expense correlates to either doorbell footage, social media posts, or suspicious activity. He even posted a story on LinkedIn about expanding the gallery's client entertainment budget the same day. He charged $5,600 for a private dining room he used with his girlfriend. Margaret's phone rings and she answers immediately. David Morrison, what can I do for you? She puts it on speaker and David's voice fills the room, tight with stress. Margaret, we need to talk. My client is experiencing some unusual account activity. What kind of unusual activity? His business credit cards have been declined. His bank called about suspicious transaction patterns, and apparently someone has been asking questions about his vendor relationships. David's tone suggests he's beginning to understand the scope of the problem. Evan thinks his accounts have been compromised. Margaret and Marcus exchange glances. Compromised how? He's convinced someone has been monitoring his finances illegally. He wants to file a complaint against Lena for invasion of privacy and financial stalking. I almost laugh. The irony is perfect. David, I think you need to advise your client that accessing his wife's business accounts and forging vendor invoices might be the real privacy violation here. Margaret says smoothly. We'll discuss it tomorrow at 2 o'clock as planned. After she hangs up, Marcus chuckles. Financial stalking. That's a new one. He's panicking. Margaret observes. Which means the banks are asking questions he can't answer. My phone buzzes with a text from Sophie. Emergency American Express just called. They're freezing the gallery's business card pending a fraud investigation. They mentioned unusual spending patterns and requested vendor verification. I show the message to Margaret and Marcus. Marcus nods approvingly. The credit card company's fraud detection finally caught up with his spending. Once they start investigating, the fake vendors will unravel in days. Margaret stands and walks to her filing cabinet. This is perfect timing. I've been preparing emergency motions all morning. She pulls out a thick folder. Temporary restraining order to prevent further asset dissipation. Emergency petition for exclusive possession of the marital residence. And civil fraud charges. How quickly can these be filed? They're already prepared. I can have them filed within the hour. And we can request an emergency hearing for tomorrow morning before our 2 o'clock meeting with David. Marcus closes his laptop with satisfaction. Lena, in 20 years of forensic accounting, I've rarely seen fraud this well documented by the perpetrator himself. Between the social media posts, the bank records, and the doorbell footage, you have enough evidence for both civil and criminal charges. My phone rings an unknown number with a Seattle area code. Ms. Hart? This is Deputy Marshal Sarah Chen with King County Sheriff's Department. We have a repossession order for a BMW registered to Evan Hart at your address. The vehicle is behind on lease payments, and the financing company has requested immediate recovery. I put the call on speaker. The car isn't here right now, Deputy. That's fine. We'll post notice and return tomorrow morning. Is there a secondary contact number for Mr. Hart? Margaret intervenes smoothly. Deputy, this is Margaret Chen, Ms. Hart's attorney. Mr. Hart is no longer residing at that address. You might try the Fairmont Hotel downtown. After the call ends, Marcus grins. It's starting. What's starting? I ask. Margaret gathers the legal papers into a briefcase. The unraveling. Evan built a house of cards using stolen money and fraudulent documents. Now the cards are falling. She snaps the briefcase shut. I'm filing these motions immediately. The sheriff will serve the eviction notice and restraining order first thing tomorrow morning. As we leave the conference room, I feel a strange sense of calm. For months, I've been living in Evan's version of reality, where he controlled the narrative and I appeared powerless. Tomorrow morning, reality will reassert itself. The numbers don't lie. The recordings don't lie. The doorbell footage doesn't lie. And the legal papers being prepared right now will make that truth impossible to ignore. By first light, the paperwork will be in a deputy's hand and Evan will discover that numbers, signatures, and cameras don't lie. The call comes at 7:43 a.m. while I'm drinking coffee in my hotel room, watching the Seattle skyline wake up through floor-to-ceiling windows. Ms. Hart, this is Deputy Chen. We're at your residence serving the emergency orders. Your husband is not taking it well. I can hear shouting in the background. Evan's voice carrying that particular pitch it reaches when he's lost control. What exactly is he saying? He's demanding to see a warrant, claiming we're trespassing on his property and insisting the papers are fraudulent. Deputy Chen's voice is professionally neutral, but I detect a hint of amusement. He also keeps saying something about his wife, signing everything over to him voluntarily. And the repossession crew? They're hooking up the BMW now. Mr. Hart tried to stop them, but when we explained that interference with a lawful repossession is a felony, he backed down. There's a pause, then the sound of a car door slamming. Ms. Hart, is there anything in the house you need immediately? We're about to secure the premises. Just my art books from the office. They're in the bookcase behind the desk. We'll have those waiting for you. The locksmith is reprogramming the smart locks now, and we've posted the restraining order notice. Mr. Hart has 30 minutes to collect personal items under supervision. After ending the call, I sit quietly for a moment, processing the fact that Evan is currently standing in what he thought was his house, watching strangers remove his car and change his locks. 3 days ago, he walked into my office with separation papers and a plan to steal my life. Now he's being evicted from his own scheme. By noon, I'm seated in Margaret's conference room, watching her arrange documents with the precision of a surgeon preparing for a complex operation. The USB drive containing Mrs. Peterson's doorbell footage sits next to a tablet displaying Marcus's forensic audit. The original recordings from my office are loaded and ready on Margaret's laptop. David and Evan should be here any minute, Margaret says, checking her watch. How are you feeling? Ready. It's the truth. For months, I've been preparing for this moment. And now that it's here, I feel an unexpected calm. The receptionist's voice crackles through the intercom. Margaret, the Morrison party is here. Send them in. David Morrison enters first, his usual confidence noticeably strained. Behind him, Evan looks like a man who spent the morning in hell. His expensive suit is wrinkled, his hair disheveled, and there's a wild quality to his eyes that I've never seen before. Margaret, we need to discuss what happened this morning. David begins without preamble. The sheriff's actions were clearly improper, evicting my client from his own home. Please sit. Margaret interrupts, her voice perfectly calm. We have quite a bit to cover. Evan slams into his chair, staring at me with undisguised fury. You did this. Somehow you orchestrated this whole thing. Orchestrated what? I ask mildly. Don't play innocent. The repossession, the frozen accounts, the eviction you set me up. Margaret opens the first folder. Actually, Evan, you set yourself up. We're just documenting what you did. She slides a copy of the Hart Family Trust documents across the table. Let's start with the basics. David, I assume you reviewed the property records. Before advising your client to accept a quitclaim deed, David's face pales as he scans the trust documentation. This indicates the house was purchased with trust funds. Entirely with trust funds. Margaret confirms, which means Evan never had any ownership interest to begin with. The quitclaim deed he demanded is legally worthless. That's impossible, Evan snarls. We've been married 10 years. Community property laws don't apply to trust assets that were never commingled with marital funds. Margaret finishes, but that's just the beginning. She opens her laptop and turns the screen toward them. Lena, would you like to explain how we obtained these recordings? I lean forward slightly. For the past month, I've been recording our conversations in my home office. You are aware of the security equipment in that room, which makes these recordings completely legal under state wiretapping laws. Margaret clicks play and Evan's voice fills the conference room. Sign this, or I'll ruin your gallery's reputation. I'll make sure every collector in the Pacific Northwest knows exactly what kind of person they're dealing with. The color drains from David's face. Evan, please tell me you didn't actually threaten your wife's business. It wasn't a threat, Evan says desperately. It was negotiation. Let's hear your definition of negotiation, Margaret says, playing another clip. If you walk out now, you'll lose everything in court. Sign the papers and we can both move on with dignity intact. David is furiously taking notes, occasionally glancing at Evan with barely concealed horror. Margaret, my client, was clearly under emotional distress. Was he under emotional distress when he did this? Margaret connects the tablet to her large monitor and plays Mrs. Peterson's doorbell footage. The timestamp shows yesterday evening Evan and his blonde companion removing items from the house while believing I was out of town. Evan's jaw works silently as he watches himself loading my grandmother's silver into his car. Or this? Margaret plays the morning footage, showing the same woman wearing my robe while carrying my jewelry box. Jesus Christ, Evan, David whispers. And then there's the social media documentation. Margaret opens Evan's LinkedIn profile, showing his premature victory post. Posted 6 hours after obtaining the fraudulent signatures, announcing his ownership of a business he has no legal claim to. I watch Evan's face cycle through. Emotions, anger, denial, desperation, and finally, something that looks like panic. You can't use any of this. The recordings are illegal. The doorbell footage is invasion of privacy. The recordings are completely legal, Margaret says calmly. The doorbell footage was taken by your neighbor, documenting activity on her own property. And the social media posts are public records you created yourself. David sets down his pen. Margaret, what are you looking for here? A settlement? Revised terms? I'm looking for justice. Margaret opens the forensic audit. Marcus Delacroix found systematic theft from Lena's business accounts. Structured cash deposits totaling $47,200. Fake vendor payments exceeding $36,000. Unauthorized use of business credit for personal. Expenses $83,400 over 12 months. She slides the detailed breakdown across the table. Every transaction is documented. Every fake vendor has been verified as fraudulent. Every expense has been cross-referenced against actual gallery business. Evan stares at the papers, his hands shaking slightly. You had me investigated. I had my own accounts. Investigated after discovering irregularities. I correct. What we found was a pattern of theft and embezzlement, spanning more than a year. David is reading the audit with growing alarm. Evan, these numbers. If they're accurate, you're looking at felony charges. They're completely accurate, Margaret says. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit is very interested in structured cash deposits and fictitious vendor schemes. The fight goes out of Evan all at once. He slumps in his chair, staring at the evidence spread across the table. This was supposed to be simple. Clean separation, fair division, no drama. Fair division of what? I ask quietly. The house you never owned? The business. You tried to steal? The money you've been embezzling for over a year? I wasn't embezzling. I was investing in our future. Whose future, Evan? Yours and your girlfriend's? Margaret closes the laptop and gathers the documents. David, here's what's going to happen. Lena is filing for divorce based on adultery and financial misconduct. She's also filing civil charges for theft, fraud, and extortion. The district attorney's office is reviewing the case for potential criminal prosecution. What about the separation agreement? David asks weakly. Null and void. Obtained through fraud and coercion, involving property that was never community assets. Margaret stands. Evan, you have 48 hours to return every item you removed from the house and every dollar you stole from the business accounts. After that, we pursue full prosecution. Evan doesn't respond. He's staring at the table, perhaps finally understanding the magnitude of what he's lost. The eviction notice stands. Margaret continues. The restraining order prevents you from contacting Lena or approaching her business. Any violation will result in immediate arrest. David helps Evan to his feet, both men looking shell-shocked. As they reach the door, Evan turns back to me. I loved you once, he says quietly. I know, I reply. That's what makes this so perfect. After they leave, Margaret and I sit in comfortable silence for several minutes. How does it feel? She asks finally. I consider the question carefully. For the first time in years, I feel completely in control of my own life. No more walking on eggshells. No more hiding assets. No more recording conversations in my own home. Like freedom, I say. By the time Evan left Margaret's office, he wasn't a husband or a businessman anymore, just a defendant in waiting. The morning after our confrontation, I'm drinking coffee at a quiet cafe near the gallery when Sophie calls, her voice tight with excitement. Lena, you need to see the Seattle Business Journal online. There's an article about the gallery ownership dispute. I pull up the website on my phone, and there it is. Local gallery ownership in question amid divorce proceedings. The article is surprisingly detailed, mentioning Evan's claims to Hart Contemporary and his LinkedIn announcement about taking over operations. How did they get this information so quickly? I ask. That's the weird part. It looks like someone tipped them off. The article quotes Evan directly, saying he's excited to bring fresh vision to Seattle's art scene and that you're stepping back to pursue other interests. I scan the article, noting how confidently Evan is quoted. He clearly spoke to the reporter yesterday evening, probably while still believing he'd won our meeting with Margaret. Sophie, has Margaret seen this? She called me an hour ago. She's issuing a response this morning. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone buzzes with a call from Margaret. Lena, I assume you've seen the business journal piece? Just reading it now. Evan certainly didn't waste time claiming victory, which makes this even more satisfying. Margaret's voice carries barely restrained glee. I'm about to send them a full rebuttal with supporting documentation, trust documents, forensic audit summary, and selected excerpts from our recorded conversations. They'll publish all that? When it involves potential criminal fraud by a man who just claimed ownership of a business he tried to steal? Absolutely. I hear papers rustling in the background. By noon, the narrative will be completely different. After hanging up, I finish my coffee and drive to the gallery. Sophie meets me at the door, practically vibrating with energy. It's been chaos here since 8 a.m., she says, ushering me inside. 3 clients called asking if Evan really owns the gallery now. 2 collectors wanted to know if their consigned pieces are safe, and the insurance company called to verify our ownership structure. What did you tell them? The truth that you're the sole owner. The gallery has never been community property, and anyone claiming otherwise is mistaken. Sophie hands me a stack of message slips. But this is the interesting part. Mrs. Chen from the Bellevue Museum called. She said word is already spreading through the collector community about some man trying to steal Hart Contemporary through a fake divorce settlement. My phone rings an unknown number with a 206 area code. Ms. Hart? This is Jennifer Walsh from Pacific Collections Recovery. We're attempting to locate Evan Hart regarding several outstanding accounts. Is this address current for him? Mr. Hart no longer resides here. I say carefully. Do you have a forwarding address? We have multiple creditors seeking payment for services rendered, including automotive leasing, corporate credit facilities, and vendor accounts. After providing the Fairmont Hotel information, I hang up to find Sophie grinning. Collection agencies? She asks. Multiple collection agencies. My phone immediately rings again, this time from American Express. Ms. Hart, this is fraud investigation regarding account ending in 4387. We've identified over $80,000 in disputed charges and need to verify legitimate business expenses versus personal use. I spend 20 minutes on the phone with American Express, confirming which charges were authorized and which appear to be personal expenses charged to the business account. The fraud investigator takes detailed notes, particularly when I explain the fake vendor payments. Ma'am, we'll be forwarding our findings to local law enforcement. This appears to be a clear case of identity theft and credit fraud. By 11 a.m., my phone has become a constant source of interruption. Sophie starts screening calls, fielding questions from creditors, reporters, and confused clients while I try to focus on actual gallery business. Lena, Sophie calls from the front desk. You need to hear this voicemail. She plays a message left on the gallery's main line, Evan's voice, slurred and desperate. This is Evan Hart, and I'm calling to clarify the ownership situation at Hart Contemporary. There's been a misunderstanding about the business transfer, and I want all clients to know that. The message cuts off abruptly. When did that come in? 20 minutes ago. But listen to this one. She plays another message, this time from a man with a deep voice. Mr. Hart, this is Northwest Recovery Services. Your BMW lease account is 90 days past due. The vehicle has been repossessed, and you owe $2,400 in outstanding payments plus recovery fees. Please call immediately. At noon, Margaret texts me a link to the Seattle Business Journal's updated story. The headline now reads, Gallery owner fights back against alleged fraud and high-stakes divorce. The article has been completely rewritten, featuring Margaret's statement and excerpts from the forensic audit. Evan's quotes from the morning version have been removed, replaced with a note that Mr. Hart was unavailable for comment regarding the fraud allegations. Sophie reads over my shoulder. Oh my God, they published the fake vendor payments. Bradley Kingston, Cascade Marketing, it's all there. My phone rings again. This time it's David Morrison, Evan's attorney. Lena, I need to speak with Margaret immediately. This is urgent. She's not my assistant, David. Call her office directly. I tried. She's not taking my calls. His voice sounds strained, almost panicked. Look, I need you to know that I'm strongly advising Evan to settle this quickly and quietly. The publicity is making this situation much worse. What publicity? The Business Journal article has been picked up by 3 other outlets. Seattle Met is running a story this afternoon about Art World fraud. And someone posted the doorbell footage on a legal blog. Evan's face is clearly visible removing items from your house. I hang up and immediately call Margaret, who answers on the first ring. I was just about to call you, she says. David Morrison is panicking. He left 4 voicemails in the past hour. What's he saying? That he's reevaluating his client relationship and wants to discuss damage control. Translation, he realizes Evan lied to him about the extent of the fraud, and he's trying to distance himself before this gets worse. Is it going to get worse? Margaret pauses. Lena, I got a call from the King County District Attorney's Office an hour ago. They're opening a preliminary investigation into Evan's conduct. When the Business Journal article mentioned structured cash deposits and fake vendor schemes, it triggered an automatic review. I sink into my office chair, processing the implications. Criminal charges? Potentially. Financial fraud, money laundering, extortion. The evidence we've gathered supports multiple felony counts. Margaret's voice becomes serious. This is bigger than divorce court now. This is criminal court. Sophie appears in my doorway, holding her phone. Lena, Mrs. Peterson is calling. She says there are news vans on the street. I look out the gallery's front window and see a Como 4 news truck parked across from my house. A reporter is standing on the sidewalk, apparently doing a live segment while pointing at the building. Margaret, how did this escalate so quickly? Because Evan made it escalate. If he'd quietly signed divorce papers and tried to negotiate a fair settlement, this would be a private family matter. Instead, he committed multiple felonies, bragged about it on social media, and then gave interviews claiming to own property he tried to steal. My phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. Lena Hart, this is Channel 7 News. We'd like to interview you about the gallery fraud case. Can you comment on your husband's alleged crimes? I show the message to Sophie, who grimaces. Welcome to being famous for all the wrong reasons, she says. No, I correct her. I'm famous for all the right reasons. I'm the woman who caught a thief. As the afternoon progresses, the scope of Evan's financial collapse becomes clear. Sophie fields calls from 3 more collection agencies, 2 credit card companies, and a commercial leasing company demanding payment for office equipment I've never seen. At 5 p.m., Margaret calls with the final piece of news. The district attorney's office just officially opened a criminal investigation. Detective Sarah Martinez will be contacting you tomorrow to arrange an interview. Lena, you should know they're treating this as a major financial fraud case. What does that mean for Evan? If convicted on all counts, he's looking at 5 to 10 years in federal prison. After Margaret hangs up, I sit quietly in my office while Sophie locks up the gallery. Through the window, I can see the news van is gone, but there's still a small crowd of curious onlookers gathered across the street. 3 days ago, Evan walked into my office believing he could steal my life with forged papers and threats. Tonight, he's hiding in a hotel room while collection agencies hunt him and prosecutors build a case that could destroy him completely. I think about the woman who signed those separation papers, carefully and deliberately, knowing exactly what The King County District Attorney's Office occupies 3 floors of a downtown Seattle high-rise, and everything about it radiates institutional authority. Gray carpets, fluorescent lighting, and the faint smell of coffee and copy toner. As I sit in the waiting area, with Margaret, watching prosecutors and detectives move through the corridors with purposeful efficiency, I realize this is where Evan's careful facade will finally be stripped away completely. Lena Hart? A woman in her 40s approaches. wearing a navy blazer and carrying a thick file folder. I'm Detective Sarah Martinez, and this is Assistant District Attorney Michael Chen. Thank you for coming in. ADA Chen is younger than I expected, maybe late 30s with sharp eyes and the demeanor of someone who's built a career on methodical preparation. Ms. Hart, we've reviewed the preliminary materials your attorney provided. What you've documented is quite comprehensive. Margaret stands. My client has been meticulous about evidence preservation and chain of custody. Everything she's providing has been legally obtained. Detective Martinez leads us to a conference room with a recording system and camera mounted discreetly in the corner. Ms. Hart, we'll be recording this interview for accuracy. You're here voluntarily as a witness and potential victim of criminal conduct. I understand. Ada Chen opens his file and removes several evidence bags. Let's start with the recordings from your home office. Walk me through how these were obtained. I explained the security system in my office, how Evan was fully aware of its presence, and how I activated recordings specifically for our conversations after discovering financial irregularities. Every recording is timestamped and automatically backed up to cloud storage. I never edited or altered any of the files. And you have the original digital files? I hand him the USB drive containing everything. Complete recordings, metadata intact, plus backup copies stored with my attorney, and a third copy in my safety deposit box. Detective Martinez examines the forensic audit. This financial analysis by Marcus Delacroix? How did you engage his services? After discovering unauthorized transactions in our accounts, I hired Marcus to conduct a comprehensive audit of all financial activity. He's a certified forensic accountant with 23 years of experience. Ada Chen reviews Marcus's report page by page. These structured cash deposits 37 separate transactions under $10,000 each. That's a classic money laundering pattern. Marcus explained that Evan was likely converting business funds to cash, then depositing them to avoid bank reporting requirements. And these fake vendors? Detective Martinez points to the invoice copies. Bradley Kingston, Cascade Marketing Solutions, Northwest Art Logistics. All fictitious. Marcus verified that none of these companies exist, but all payments went to accounts controlled by Evan or his associates. Ada Chen makes detailed notes. Ms. Hart, I need to ask about the doorbell camera footage. This was obtained from your neighbor? Mrs. Peterson. She installed the camera for security after a package theft. It records continuously and stores everything in the cloud. She's provided the original files with chain of custody documentation. As if summoned by our conversation, there's a soft knock on the door. Detective Martinez opens it to reveal Mrs. Peterson, looking determined and carrying a small folder. I hope I'm not late, she says. I brought additional documentation. Ada Chen stands to greet her. Mrs. Peterson, thank you for coming. We just need to verify the authenticity of the doorbell recordings. Mrs. Peterson settles into a chair with the authority of someone who's been waiting 70 years to deliver crucial testimony. Young man, I've been documenting everything that camera records for 6 months. Timestamps, weather conditions, even the mail delivery schedule. If you want to verify authenticity, I can tell you exactly when every recording was made and what the lighting conditions were. She opens her folder and produces a detailed log. March 22nd, 11:43. PM, clear night, temperature 47 degrees. Mr. Hart's blonde companion leaving the house wearing Mrs. Hart's navy robe. March 15th, 2:17 a.m., same woman, different outfit, carrying what appeared to be jewelry boxes. Detective Martinez exchanges glances with ADA Chen. Mrs. Peterson, you've been documenting all of this? Honey, when you live next to a marriage falling apart, you pay attention, especially when one spouse is sneaking around while the other is traveling for work. She turns to me. Lena, I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner, but I wasn't sure what was my business and what wasn't. You documented everything perfectly, I assure her. Ada Chen reviews Mrs. Peterson's log with obvious admiration. This level of detail will be invaluable for establishing timelines. Are you willing to testify under oath if this goes to trial? Son, I've been waiting my whole life to testify about something this clear-cut. Yes means yes, no means no, and theft means theft. While Mrs. Peterson provides her statement, I can hear raised voices from somewhere else in the building. Through the conference room's small window, I catch glimpses of David Morrison, pacing in the hallway, occasionally pausing to answer his phone with increasingly agitated gestures. Detective Martinez notices my attention. Mr. Hart is being interviewed in a separate room. His attorney requested frequent breaks. How is that going? Ada Chen's expression doesn't change. but there's something in his eyes that suggests professional satisfaction. Let's just say your husband's version of events doesn't align with the documented evidence. Margaret speaks for the first time in 20 minutes. Michael, what's the timeline for potential charges? Based on what we've seen today, I'll be presenting this to the grand jury within 2 weeks. The evidence supports multiple felony counts: criminal fraud, embezzlement, extortion, money laundering, and attempted theft of real property. All felonies? I ask. The structured cash deposits alone constitute money laundering under federal guidelines. Add the fake vendor schemes, the recorded threats, and the attempted property theft, and we're looking at a minimum of 5 years if convicted on all counts. A commotion in the hallway draws our attention. Through the window, I see Evan being escorted past our conference room, flanked by Detective Martinez's colleagues. He's disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled and stained, his hair wild. David Morrison follows close behind, looking like a man whose client has just confessed to everything. Evan's voice carries through the supposedly soundproof walls. This is harassment. She set me up. You can't use recordings made without consent. Ada Chen calmly makes a note. Actually, Washington is a one-party consent state, and the recordings were made in Mrs. Hart's own home office with Mr. Hart's knowledge of the recording equipment. As Evan's voice fades down the hallway, Ada Chen closes his file. Ms. Hart, I want you to know that in 15 years of prosecuting financial crimes, I've rarely seen such thoroughly documented fraud. Your preparation and attention to detail have made this case extraordinarily strong. What happens next? Grand jury presentation, probable indictment, arraignment, and trial. This will likely take 6 to 8 months to fully resolve. He stands and extends his hand. Thank you for your cooperation. We'll be in touch as the case progresses. As we leave the DA's office, Margaret, and I walk past the room where Evan was questioned. The door is open, and I can see overturned chairs and scattered papers. Whatever happened in there, it wasn't the calm, controlled presentation we just concluded. How do you feel? Margaret asks as we wait for the elevator. I consider the question while watching downtown Seattle bustle below us through the building's windows. For months, I lived in fear of Evan's threats and manipulation. I recorded conversations in my own home, hid financial documents, and carefully preserved evidence because I knew this day would come. I feel like myself again. I say finally. The elevator arrives, and as the doors close, I catch one last glimpse of David Morrison in the hallway, frantically taking notes while talking on his phone. He looks like a man trying to salvage a case that was lost before it began. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one on trial. Evan was, and the courtroom would soon make that official. The King County Superior Court buzzes with morning energy attorneys wheeling briefcases, reporters clutching notepads, and the steady rhythm of heels on marble floors. I sit beside Margaret on a bench outside courtroom 3A, watching Evan arrive with David Morrison. Evan's expensive suit can't hide the strain in his face or the way his hands shake as he grips his coffee cup. Ready? Margaret asks, gathering her files. I've been ready for months. Judge Patricia Reynolds commands her courtroom with quiet authority, her silver hair pulled back and reading glasses perched precisely on her nose. As we settle into our seats, I notice the gallery of observers, reporters, a few Art World colleagues, and Mrs. Peterson in the front row wearing her best blue dress. This is a preliminary hearing in the matter of State versus Evan Hart. Judge Reynolds announces. Counsel, please present your opening positions. Ada Chen rises with practiced confidence. Your Honor, the State will present evidence of systematic financial fraud spanning 14 months. Mr. Hart used threats and coercion to obtain fraudulent signatures, attempted to steal real property, valued at $400,000, and embezzled over $120,000 from his wife's business through fake vendor schemes and structured cash deposits. David Morrison stands, looking like a man trying to polish a tarnished reputation. Your Honor, this is fundamentally a marital dispute that has been criminalized by an angry spouse. Mr. Hart was operating under the reasonable belief that marital assets were community property, and any financial irregularities can be explained by legitimate business expenses. Judge Reynolds adjusts her glasses. Mr. Morrison, are you suggesting that fake vendor invoices constitute legitimate business expenses? Your Honor, we dispute the characterization of those transactions as fraudulent. I see. Proceed with your evidence, Mr. Chen. Ada Chen steps to the lectern with a leather portfolio. Your Honor, I'd like to enter Exhibit A, the Hart Family Trust documents, dated 15 years prior to the defendant's marriage to Mrs. Hart. Judge Reynolds reviews the paperwork carefully. These documents establish that both the residence and business were purchased entirely with trust funds and remain separate property under state law. Correct, Your Honor. This means the quitclaim deed obtained by Mr. Hart is legally void. He attempted to force his wife to transfer property she never owned in the first place. David shifts uncomfortably. Your Honor, community property laws don't apply to trust assets that were never commingled. Judge Reynolds interrupts. Continue, Mr. Chen. Your Honor, I'd like to play a brief audio excerpt demonstrating how these signatures were obtained. The courtroom speakers crackle to life with Evan's voice. Sign this, or I'll ruin your gallery's reputation. I'll make sure every collector in the Pacific Northwest knows exactly what kind of person they're dealing with. The recording fills the silent courtroom, and I watch Evan's face redden. Several observers in the gallery visibly react to the threatening tone. Your Honor, Ada Chen continues, this recording was made legally in Mrs. Hart's home office, with Mr. Hart's full knowledge of the recording equipment. Judge Reynolds makes notes. Mr. Morrison, do you dispute the authenticity of this recording? We reserve the right to challenge admissibility. Noted. Continue, Mr. Chen. I'd like to call Mrs. Eleanor Peterson to authenticate video evidence. Mrs. Peterson approaches the witness stand with the confidence of someone who's been preparing for this moment her entire life. After being sworn in, she settles into the chair and looks directly at Ada Chen. Mrs. Peterson, can you describe your relationship to the defendant and Mrs. Hart? I live next door to their house. I've watched Mr. Hart come and go for 10 years, and I installed a doorbell camera 6 months ago for security purposes. Does this camera record continuously? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Everything is timestamped and stored in the cloud. Mrs. Peterson opens her small folder. I've kept detailed logs of all significant activity, including dates, times, weather conditions, and lighting. Ada Chen displays a monitor showing the doorbell footage. Mrs. Peterson, can you identify what we're seeing in this video? That's Mr. Hart and an unidentified blonde woman removing items from the house on March 22nd at 11:43 p.m. She's wearing Mrs. Hart's navy silk robe and carrying what appears to be jewelry boxes. Are you certain this is Mrs. Hart's robe? I've seen her wear it dozens of times. Same color, same style, same belt tie. David Morrison objects weakly. Speculation, Your Honor. Overruled. The witness is describing her observations. Ada Chen plays several more clips, each one showing Evan and his companion systematically removing items from the house. Mrs. Peterson identifies each piece with remarkable detail, referencing her logs for exact timestamps and weather conditions. Thank you, Mrs. Peterson. No further questions. David Morrison's cross-examination is brief and ineffective. Mrs. Peterson's logs are too detailed, her observations too precise, and her testimony too credible to undermine. Next, Sophie takes the stand, describing Evan's attempt to change the gallery locks with a locksmith and an unknown woman. Did Mr. Hart have any legal authority to change those locks? Ada Chen asks. None whatsoever. The gallery is Ms. Hart's sole property, established before their marriage. When I refused to allow the lock change, he became agitated and claimed he owned the business. What happened next? I called the police. They arrived within 10 minutes and asked Mr. Hart to leave the premises. During Sophie's testimony, I notice Evan becoming increasingly agitated. He's whispering urgently to David Morrison, his gestures becoming more erratic with each piece of evidence presented. Finally, Evan can't contain himself any longer. He stands abruptly, interrupting Sophie's testimony. This is all lies. She orchestrated this whole thing. She recorded me illegally. She turned my neighbors against me. Mr. Hart. Judge Reynolds' voice cuts through the courtroom like a blade. Sit down immediately, or I will hold you in contempt. David Morrison grabs Evan's arm, pulling him back into his seat. But the damage is done. The outburst has confirmed everything the evidence suggested: a man out of control, desperate, and exactly the kind of person who would make the threats captured on the recordings. Your Honor, David Morrison says quietly, I request a brief recess to confer with my client. 5 minutes, Mr. Morrison. Control your client. During the recess, I watched David and Evan huddled in urgent conversation near the windows. David's body language suggests he's delivering very bad news, while Evan's responses grow increasingly agitated. When court resumes, Judge Reynolds addresses both parties directly. Based on the evidence presented today, I find sufficient probable cause to believe that criminal conduct occurred. The trust documents clearly establish that the defendant had no legal claim to the property in question. The recordings demonstrate coercion and threats used to obtain fraudulent signatures. The video evidence shows systematic removal of property following those fraudulent signatures. She pauses, looking directly at Evan. Mr. Hart, Your outburst in my courtroom demonstrates exactly the kind of poor judgment and lack of self-control that supports the state's allegations. This case will proceed to trial, scheduled for 8 weeks from today. As court adjourns, I notice David Morrison immediately approaching Ada Chen near the prosecutor's table. Their conversation is brief but intense, and I suspect David is already exploring plea negotiations. 3 weeks later, Margaret called with unexpected news. The structured cash deposit pattern had triggered federal banking law violations, and the U.S. Attorney's Office was taking over the case. Our scheduled state trial was canceled as federal prosecutors prepared money laundering charges alongside the fraud counts. By the end of the month, Evan had accepted a plea deal in federal court rather than face the prospect of even longer sentences at trial. 6 months later, the late afternoon sun streams through the tall windows of Hart Contemporary Gallery, casting warm light across the restored hardwood floors. I'm hanging a new collection Pacific Northwest landscapes by an emerging artist whose work captures the region's moody beauty. Sophie arranges the opening reception details while Marcus reviews the quarterly financial reports at my desk. Margaret sits in the conversation area, reading legal briefs while sipping wine from the reception setup. The Anderson collection sold completely, Sophie announces, and we have 3 new consignment inquiries for next month. Mrs. Peterson arrives early for the opening, wearing a lavender dress and carrying a small wrapped package. "For your new beginning," she says, handing me the gift. Inside is a small crystal paperweight engraved with "Evidence Doesn't Lie." A.P. The evening news plays softly on the office television, and the anchor's voice catches my attention. Former Seattle businessman Evan Hart was sentenced today to 4 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to multiple counts of fraud and money laundering. The court also ordered full restitution to Hart Contemporary Gallery for the stolen funds. Hart admitted to stealing over $100,000 from his wife's art gallery and attempting to fraudulently claim ownership of property valued at nearly $500,000. Margaret mutes the television. How does it feel hearing it officially concluded? I consider the question while looking around the gallery, my gallery filled with honest light and genuine art. The books Evan tried to steal are back on their shelves. The silver frames hold pictures of people who matter. The business operates with complete transparency and integrity. It feels quiet, I say finally. Not empty quiet, but peaceful quiet. Marcus raises his wine glass. To thorough documentation and proper legal procedures. Sophie adds, to standing up for what's right. Mrs. Peterson concludes, to good neighbors and honest cameras. Margaret smiles. To justice, served methodically and completely. As the opening reception begins, I watch collectors and art lovers move through the space with genuine appreciation for the work displayed. No one is performing or manipulating or stealing. They're simply enjoying beauty created honestly and presented truthfully. For the first time, Evan's lies weren't whispered in private, they were entered into the record. And months later, under bright gallery lights and honest daylight, I learned that freedom isn't loud. It's steady. He thought he could outsmart me, but evidence never lies. Thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it and want to hear more tales of betrayal, justice, and redemption, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. Your support helps us keep telling these stories.